Hassan Karim Akbar. In late February 2003, Sergeant Hassan Karim Akbar was a seemingly unremarkable engineer attached to the 326th Engineer Battalion, 101st Airborne Division. Stationed at Camp Pennsylvania in Kuwait, his peers described constant friction, disciplinary write-ups for insubordination, withdrawal from social settings, and a growing paranoia that he was being targeted. Though his battalion prepared to cross into Iraq, in his personal diary, entries untouched by others, he wrote on February 4th, "I'm going to try and kill as many of them as possible." At the time, no one took those words seriously. They existed among the typical slog of wartime grievances. But in the early hours of March 23, 2003, Akbar made lethal intentions brutally real. He severed power by sabotaging the camp generator, plunging the base into darkness. As his fellow soldiers slept, Akbar crept into the shadows with a duffel bag packed with 4 fragmentation grenades. When he pulled the pins and hurled the grenades into 3 tents housing his own comrades, the explosions tore through canvas and flesh. Soldiers awakened to shattering thunder, choking dust. Before the survivors could react, Akbar grabbed his M4 rifle and fired indiscriminately at anyone who moved. By dawn's first light, the tally stood at 2 dead: Army Captain Christopher S. Seifert, just 27, and Air Force Major Gregory L. Stone, aged 40, and 14 gravely wounded. Soldiers writhing in agony and blood-soaked litter mark the runway to the infirmary. Charged under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Akbar faced a general court-martial at Fort Bragg in April 2005. Prosecutors depicted a calculated betrayal. An engineer sworn to build could just as easily destroy. They presented the sabotage generator, the grenades crafted for maximum carnage, and the rifle emptied into fleeing soldiers. They showcased his diary, a litany of rage and contempt. Akbar's isolation, insomnia, and perceived slights had pushed him beyond reason. The jury saw no excuse for murdering comrades in arms. On April 21, 2005, the jury unanimously convicted Akbar on 2 counts of premeditated murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. A death sentence followed. Under military protocol, that ruling was automatically reviewed by a chain of appellate courts. Over the next decade, his attorneys challenged his competency, the legitimacy of the court-martial procedures, and even the authenticity of the diary. Each appeal was rejected in turn. The Army Court of Criminal Appeals denied relief in 2006. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces dismissed his final bid in 2010, and the Supreme Court refused to intervene. Though administrative hurdles and presidential review remain, Hassan Karim Akbar is today one of only 4 people under active sentence of death by the U.S. military. He resides at the U.S. Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Because no president has signed an execution order since 1961, Akbar's death sentence remains in limbo. Still, the brutal betrayal of his fellow soldiers on that March night stands as one of the most shocking wartime atrocities in modern American history, an atrocity that continues to weigh heavily on his victims and the families left behind. Ronald Adrian Gray. Long before the word serial killer echoed through Fort Bragg, Ronald Adrian Gray appeared to be a model soldier. In January 1984, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and was assigned to the prestigious 82nd Airborne Division as a cook. The structured routine of military life suited him, or so it seemed. Beneath the uniform, however, a savage, predatory streak lurked. Gray unleashed a reign of terror that shattered lives across Greensboro, and his first known victim was 23-year-old Linda Jean Coates, a nursing student at Campbell University. Coates picked up Gray hitchhiking near campus. A jogger discovered her body in a wooded area outside Spring Lake. She had been stabbed and left to bleed out. Gray's identity remained unknown until investigators matched tire tracks and blood evidence to his Jeep. 18-year-old Tammy Kofer Wilson vanished on her way to a friend's home. Bore clear signs of sexual assault and multiple stab wounds. Her body, found along Highway 210, a .22 caliber round from Wilson's skull that would later connect to Gray's collection of firearms. During the fall of 1986, Gray struck again. Private Laura Lee Vickery Clay, another teenager, was last seen hailing a ride near Fort Bragg. Her battered body was discovered in a wooded area, shot multiple times. A .22 pistol recovered near her remains shared ballistics with the weapon used on Wilson. Soon afterward, Private Marianne Lang Namath was attacked in her own barracks. Gray used a Sheridan Air Force duress pass to gain entry, then raped and stabbed her. Miraculously, Namath survived and identified Gray in a police lineup. On January 6, 1987, taxi driver Kimberly Ann Ruggles picked up Gray for what she assumed was a routine fare. When her abandoned cab was found riddled with bullet holes near Fayetteville's industrial district, investigators linked Gray's fingerprints inside the cab and Ruggles's stolen money to him. With mounting evidence and a frightened survivor's testimony, authorities apprehended Gray at Fort Bragg. 1987, Gray entered a guilty plea in Cumberland County Superior Court to 22 felony counts for murders, rape, kidnapping, and burglary. The civilian court handed down 3 consecutive life sentences plus 5 concurrent life terms. However, because Gray was an active duty soldier, he also faced a general court-martial at Fort Bragg in April 1988. Survivors and forensic experts testified to the chilling pattern of violence, his stalking, planning, and predatory assaults. The military jury convicted him on 2 counts of premeditated murder, 1 count of attempted premeditated murder, 3 counts of rape, and additional charges of burglary and kidnapping. In an unprecedented move, the commanding general of the 82nd Airborne Division approved Gray's death sentence on July 28, 1988. Yet, under military law, that sentence required presidential confirmation. 20 years passed before President George W. Bush signed the execution order on July 28, 2008. Marking the first presidential-authorized military execution. Nonetheless, Gray's appeals through the Army Court of Criminal Appeals, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, and multiple federal courts stalled any scheduling of his execution. Today, Ronald Adrian Gray is the longest-serving inmate on military death row. Crimes remain a grim testament to betrayal within ranks. A soldier who used the trust of his unit as camouflage for his murderous intentions. Held at the U.S. Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, Gray spends each day awaiting a final resolution, one that has proven as elusive as the nightmares of his victims. Nidal Malik Hassan. 2009 at Fort Hood, Texas, began quietly enough. Soldiers completing readiness processing before deploying overseas. But on November 5, 2009, the base became ground zero for one of the deadliest mass shootings on any American military installation. Major Nidal Malik Hassan, an Army psychiatrist lauded for his work with service members suffering from PTSD and combat stress, instead opened fire on the unarmed men and women he had sworn to treat. Described by peers as highly educated and empathetic, Hassan graduated from Virginia Tech and then the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences. Colleagues praised his calm demeanor and cultural awareness. Hassan harbored a growing resentment toward U.S. military engagements in the Middle East. Intelligence officials intercepted emails between Hassan and known extremist figures overseas, warnings that were never escalated to commanders. In many ways, Hassan was a textbook case of internal radicalization, bright, credible, but with beliefs at odds with his duties. Hassan entered the Soldier Readiness Processing Center armed with an FN-57 pistol and a .357 Magnum revolver. As soldiers lined up for pre-deployment processing, vaccinations, paperwork, Hassan shouted Allahu Akbar and began firing, Hundreds scrambled for cover, some diving beneath desks. Within minutes, he paused long enough for military police and civilian agents to return fire. Hassan was struck multiple times, paralyzed from the waist down, and finally subdued. 13 soldiers lay dead on the processing center floor. More than 30 others were wounded. The stunned medical staff loaded the injured into ambulances, while forensics combed the building for shell casings and evidence. Emails extracted from Hassan's computer painted a chilling portrait. He saw himself as a soldier of Allah, convinced that killing fellow Americans was righteous retribution for U.S. actions abroad. Charged under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Hassan stood trial in a general court-martial that began on August 6, 2013. From the start, his courtroom behavior shocked attendees. He refused to shave his beard on religious grounds, sparred with judges over procedural rules, and ultimately opted to represent himself. When government lawyers presented dozens of witness testimonies, ballistic experts tracing bullets to Hassan's weapons, he mounted little defense. Hassan seldom cross-examined prosecution witnesses and offered no testimony of his own. Instead, he used the spotlight to reiterate extremist talking points. The military jury returned a guilty verdict on all 13 counts of premeditated murder. Hassan received a sentence of death. The Army Court of Criminal Appeals upheld his conviction in 2014. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces denied his appeal in September 2023. And in March 2025, the Supreme Court refused to intervene. The U.S. disciplinary barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Hassan has exhausted virtually all legal avenues. His case awaits presidential review. No president has authorized a military execution since 1961. As he continues to languish under a death sentence, Hassan's atrocity remains a stark reminder that radicalization can lurk even within trusted caregivers. The families of the 13 slain soldiers still grapple with grief, and Hassan's ultimate fate, whether he will ever face the firing squad, remains uncertain in a system that seldom carries out its harshest sentence.